Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. The budget dive watch category is very much like a game of Mortal Kombat. So many competitors all vying for your credits and some fantastic watches out there. Indeed, I made a top 10 dive watches under $400 video recently with some of my personal favourites. One watch that featured in that list is the Glycine Combat Sub. It's been on my radar for the last couple of years, but I haven't had the opportunity to give it the full treatment, to spend an extended period with it and review it for all of you up until this point. So big thank you to my friend Ashley for loaning me this one in for review. And I have to say, it's pretty fantastic. Now, I included that in my top 10 roundup video, and I left quite specific instructions as to where and when and how much I think you should be buying one of these for. I said you should be looking at drop.com when they have them roughly quarterly at $399 US. However, I've had a look on eBay and there's some that are even cheaper than that at the moment. And if you live in the States, check that out. Only one variant though, one colorway, $299 US from Costco at the moment. That is a smoking hot price on a proper Swiss-made 200-meter dive watch with a screw-down crown, a very nice bracelet, and an ETA 2824 in the back of it. Now, it's not perfect. It doesn't take a genius to work out the areas where they have shaved a couple of dollars, but none of them are fundamental. I think it's great. Let's flip the camera and have a look at Ashley's. Sorry about that, I did get slightly carried away there. I would always play Liu Kang in the arcades in Mortal Kombat, the original game, precisely because of those fantastic Bruce Lee style noises he used to make when he attacked. But anyway, back to the matter at hand, the Glycine Combat Sub. The prices that I flashed up in the intro just go to show that there are some hot deals to be had on this watch if you are prepared to do a bit of digging and to shop around. I think anywhere between $300, $400, perhaps even a little bit more than that to get the colorway you like. There's good value to be had with these combat subs. Now, this specific one, Ashley's, is black and kind of orangey here, bit of faded yellow, almost a kind of faux patina on the indices and the hands on the bracelet. This may not be your particular cup of tea, but there are literally dozens of Glycine Combat subs to choose from. There's two-tones, there's DLCs, there's ones with Arabics, there's ones with batons, canvas straps, rubber straps, even the famous GoldenEye model if you fancy that one. Dig around, shop around, be patient, and I'm sure you'll find the perfect combat sub for you. So a healthy 42mm in diameter and 50mm lug tip to lug tip. However, the key dimension I think with the combat sub is that one, less than 11mm thick. I talk about it a lot. One of the benefits of using an ETA 2824 based movement in your watch is that you don't have to make it a 14-15mm thick behemoth if you don't want to. And yet remarkably few companies can squeeze their watches under 11mm thick, and I think this one just wears a treat as a consequence. Look at the curvature to those lugs as well. I've got 7-inch wrists. I'll show you on my wrist indoors and outdoors shortly, and it wears very, very nicely indeed. 22mm lug width, bit of a taper down to 20, back up to 22 at the clasp. Sized up for me, or more specifically, sized up for my mate Ashley. This one weighs in at 160 grams. So a good size, good weight, and everything in balance and in proportion. 316L stainless steel case, crown, bezel, and bracelet. We have got solid links with push pins, solid end links, a proper milled clasp with security fold over and pushers, and plenty of micro adjustments. There is a piece of dead flat sapphire crystal covering the dial. Now the bezel is one slight quirk of this watch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 60 click unidirectional rotating dive time bezel, not the 120 you would perhaps expect. So if you are taking this one diving, you're not going to be able to time every half minute. You can only time it to the nearest minute. Not a big issue for me because I can barely swim, let alone dive. I haven't passed my PADI because I can't tread water for 10 minutes. However, the action is very nice indeed. Smooth, precise, very nice audible click, and no backplate, no bounce from that aluminium bezel insert with Lume pip. Now the case design and finishing, not particularly fancy. Like I said, it is quite easy to see where they have economized with this combat sub, how they're able to offer Swiss made on the dial, Swiss movement in the back, and yet get under that $400 regularly for RRP. High polish on the side, brushed, a circular brush on those lugs, but very, very simple. No chamfered edging, nothing too fancy. Little Glycine crown there with the logo on the end. Semi-guarded by a decent set of crown guards, similarly circular brush on those and a coin-edged bezel. It's nice, it's not particularly fancy, but it is well done. Similarly, fairly simple 3-piece oyster bracelet, consistent brushing, all brush finish throughout, high polish on the side there. Not the best attempt to integrate the end links with the case, if I'm being honest. It almost reminds me of a Seiko there, and there is a little bit of rattle here with these lugs, but again, nothing that I'm going to complain too much about at the price. And the clasp is okay. Again, Glycine name and logo just printed on, not etched. They've saved a couple of cents that way, but it's a kind of custom clasp. It's not the super basic one, and it's a decent mill clasp as well, a machine clasp. No display case pack, again perhaps a cost-cutting exercise, but you do get the combat sub logo, the twin seals, the trident there, Glycine logo combat, and the usual spec sheet. 20 atmospheres, 200 meters of water resistance, screw down crown, sapphire crystal, automatic, and all stainless steel construction, and those nice solid end links. Zoomed in on the printed dial. Now I guess they've saved a couple of dollars that way as well, but I'll throw in some macro here. I think it's really nicely done. I would rather have a crisply printed dial than one with applied indices that are all over the place pointing in different directions, and I think the Glycine is very nicely done. So there are batons at the 12, the 3, the 6 and the 9. You can see the Arabics, the 12, the 6 and the 9 are just centralized a little bit, allowing for those batons. Large Arabics all the way around, plus there's an inner ring with 13 to 24, almost like a field watch aesthetic there as well. Now the Glycine logo is embossed, it's slightly raised. Glycine underneath there, combat automatic, sub 20 atmospheres, and the magic words Swiss made either side of the baton at 6, as they usually are. Colour match date wheel as well, another nice little touch, and one that I'm thankful they didn't try and save a couple of pennies by putting a white date wheel. Nothing worse than a white date wheel on a black dial, I don't think. Now, no rehaut dial, no chapter ring here, but they've kind of printed one on. As you can see, there's the minute track all the way round the outer edge, kind of looks like a chapter ring almost. Circular hour markers dotted into that. I think the whole thing looks good, and I do quite like this orange, black and slightly off lemon yellow colour scheme. It did raise a few eyebrows when I included this one in the top 10 dive watches under 400, but I quite like it. As I said, if you're not a fan of this colourway, there are literally dozens to choose from, so you won't be disappointed. Now the handset, they're almost Mercedes hands. You can almost imagine the Mercedes symbol on that little hour hand there, but not quite. I think, again, a good choice, just differentiating this one from some of the more Submariner-alike versions of this watch, as does that paddle second hand there, pushing all the way out to the minute track. I think the hands are nicely in proportion. They're not, again, the fanciest, kind of flat, not a lot of texture to them, printed dial as well, but the whole thing, that kind of colour balance, I think, makes it all work together. Now, one consequence of the dial being printed rather than using applied indices is that the lume is okay, if not amazing. You always get slightly weaker lume with a printed dial than you do with deep-filled applied indices. C3 Superluminova looks great initially, but does fade maybe a little bit quicker than you want it to. The hands hang on in reasonably well. Overall, no major complaints about the dial or the hands. No complaints about the performance of the movement in this one either. Pretty strong, all things considered. Now, Glycine call it a GL224 essentially. It's a relabeled ETA 2824. Minimal beat error, decent amplitude, and great minimal variation per day, plus 3 seconds per day there. Now, it's a 25 joule hacking and hand winding, high beat Swiss made automatic, 28,800 vibrations per hour, meaning you get 8 ticks of the second hand per second. That nice smooth sweep that we enjoy from luxury Swiss timepieces. Stated tolerances on these are -20 to +20, so this one coming in at +3, +4 is doing very nicely indeed, thank you very much. And no complaints about how it wears either. I've got a 7-inch wrist, 42, kind of slightly larger than I would ordinarily wear, but the fact that it is so slim, less than 11mm thick, I mean look at that, just fits beautifully on wrist. And the pretty dramatic curvature to those lug ends, again 50 would normally be slightly large for me, but this one contours beautifully to my wrist. Now I've got it done up nice and tight. I would tend to wear slightly larger, slightly heavier stainless steel sports watches in this manner. You obviously don't have to. Just superb fit, I think, this one. Very rare that I review divers, certainly around this price, that are less than 11mm thick. This is one of the few that I've managed to review on the channel so far, I believe. And that's the proper overhead shot as well. I think a good size, looks pretty good on my wrist overall. Nice and legible. I'd probably be going for the ones with the Arabics rather than the batons. I think it's an interesting point of difference, just to kind of differentiate it from any number of other dive watches at this price. Nice and legible even from a distance. And that legibility continues outside. Not sure how much, if any, AR coating they managed to put on the underside of that flat sapphire crystal, but it's not a big problem because of the inherent legibility of those pale coloured Arabics against a dark coloured dial. Just watch if you are going for some of the more colourful or even the darker variants, some of them perhaps not quite as legible as this one. On wrist though, looking good, I must say, even if the Sydney weather isn't looking quite as good as the watch today. But it's a dive watch, it's not really a problem. So not so much a moans and niggles section today, just a refresher of the number of areas that I think are compromised on this watch. A couple of corners that are slightly cut to get it under the price that they've managed to sell this watch at. And I've listed them all already, and to me none of them are deal breakers. It's a printed dial rather than applied. The lume isn't therefore stellar as a consequence. Case shape and finishing, pretty basic, but it is nicely done, and a 60 click rather than a 120 click bezel. But like I said, none of those are deal breakers in my opinion. The only other thing that I can think of that you should bear in mind is if you do have a wrist that is much smaller than mine, it is quite a long lug to lug. Nice curve, pretty slim, but do bear that in mind. There's nothing worse, I don't think, than a watch that overhangs, so make sure you try one of these on if at all possible. Borrow one from a friend perhaps. But overall, a really strong offering from Glycine. I know the brand has had a bit of a kicking recently. They were bought out by Invicta a couple of years ago, and Invicta are the brand that everybody loves to hate, everybody loves to rag on, and there are question marks, to be honest, with some of the build quality of Invictas, but I don't think it's affected Glycine. These are still very nicely done models. So do your own research, shop around, see if you can pick one up for one of those hot Costco prices. I'd be prepared to take any colorway I could at $299, to be honest. If I was paying the $400 that they are on drop.com, I would be a little more picky and I'd be going for one of the ones that floats my boat. But overall, very impressive this watch. Swiss made on the dial, Swiss movement in the back, less than $400. There aren't too many watches that can say that at this price. So there you have it, Glycine Combat Sub, one of the best dive watches you can pick up for less than $500 US, I think. And it just goes to show there are deals to be had if you're prepared to bide your time, keep your powder dry and jump on them when the opportunity arises. $299 US, this thing is an absolute knockout. $399, perhaps even a little bit more than that, I think it's still great value for money. The case shape isn't the most intricate, the dial is only printed, the lume isn't fantastic, and not everyone is going to get on with a 60 click bezel. But these are minor inconveniences. It wears really, really nicely for a 42mm. The bracelet's super comfy. The whole thing feels great on wrist. And it's Swiss made. If you're a Swiss snob, it's one of the only Swiss made divers that you can readily pick up for less than $400. It's taken me a while to review it, but it was worth the wait. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.